5636, otherwise known as the Tax Reform for Acceleration and Inclusion, or TRAIN Act, is the first package of the Comprehensive Tax Reform Program, which is the centerpiece legislation of the Duterte administration. Under HB 5636, the government plans to lower the personal income tax rates while broadening the tax base through reforms in consumption taxes such as the value-added tax and excise taxes for sugar-sweetened beverages, fuels, and automobiles. Last May 31, the House of Representatives approved the bill on third and final reading. It is just a matter of time that this bill will also be passed at the Senate, especially since the President has certified it as urgent. As taxpayers, we will be greatly affected by the reforms being pushed by the government. Our guest speaker, who is currently the Undersecretary for Strategy, Economics, and Results Group of the Department of Finance, has been instrumental in crafting these reforms. He will shed light on this most important bill to help us understand its implications on the businesses, on our businesses, and to our daily lives. He is part of a new breed of young, well-educated, dynamic, and forward-thinking leaders in government. After graduating with a BS Management Engineering degree from the Ateneo de Manila University in 2000, his first job was a system analyst at Anderson Consulting, Accenture. In 2002, he went on to complete his Master of Arts degree in Economics at the University of the Philippines, where he specialized in fiscal policy and tax administration. Later, he went on to earn a PhD in Economics from the University of the Philippines in 2011. He joined the World Bank Group as research analyst in 2004. While doing this, he also found time to share his knowledge with others as he was concurrently an assistant professorial lecturer, of mathematics and economics at the Ateneo de Manila University. He was promoted to country economist for Philippines in 2008 and was further promoted to senior country economist, a position he held up to 2016. In this capacity, he advised the government on strategies and policies to attain more inclusive growth, the type that creates more and better jobs and reduces poverty. In September 2016, he joined the Department of Finance as Undersecretary for Strategy, Economics, and Results Group. In this current capacity, he helps the government achieve its 10-point socio-economic agenda by ensuring equitable and sustainable financing through tax reform. On a personal note, he has an interest in astronomy, so much so that he even named his little boy Key after a star. Perhaps the young boy is also destined to be a star, just like his dad. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Carl Kendrick Chua, our keynote speaker for this evening.
Good evening to everyone. Is this loud enough? Is that okay? Yeah. And I'd like to say, Rex said we are taxed from birth to death. He forgot that after death we still have the estate tax. But we will make it lighter because it is now going to be 6%, not 20%. Thank you for this very good opportunity to present. This is over 300 presentations that I've done in the last 14 months. And I feel that tax is not a very easy topic. And so I really spend my time either in Congress or in various groups explaining the benefits of the tax reform. I would like to first and foremost say that this is the first time we are doing a major tax reform where there is no crisis. Past comprehensive tax reform had to address a certain crisis, such as the VAT reform in 2005. And this is also the first time we are doing a tax reform in this big scale, where there is no external force like the World Bank or the IMF telling us what to do. This is purely an initiative of the government, and it is purely because we have this very big ambition to invest in the country's future. For 7 decades, prior to around 2005, we have been in a stabilization mode, meaning all our policies are about keeping the economy afloat. If the country or the economy were a ship, the policy is to keep it afloat, because every 3 or 5 years it would be at risk of sinking. And that is why we could never think long term. But two events, very difficult events, drastically changed the policy environment. The first is the 1997 Asian financial crisis, where very important financial and monetary policies were instituted. And that is why long gone are the days of double-digit inflation. We are actually experiencing for over 10 years very low and stable inflation. And mind you, the biggest tax is not the tax reform, it is inflation. You can think of countries that have double-digit, triple-digit, or even quadruple-digit inflation that basically eats up everything. And to the point that a 3% inflation is expected, and anytime we go towards 4%, people start to complain. When they conveniently forget that 10, 20 years ago, 4% was really low, and 10% was bearable, and 20% was not. The second event was the 2004 fiscal crisis. And we instituted very important fiscal reforms, including the reform VAT, or the RVAT. It was painful, people had to suffer a bit, but because of that, this economy is 3 times richer compared to 13 years ago, and the average Filipino is twice as rich today. And that is why, for the first time, we are going to do a tax reform whose main purpose is not stabilization. It's not because we have a revenue target to meet so that we contain the deficit and pay our debts. This is the first time we are doing a tax reform because we want to invest in the future. It's the first time that we can move this country forward, and the policies are not about stabilization but long-term development, so that we can move the ship and take it off. And the underlying reason why we do this tax reform is because we want to address poverty and inequality. We want, by 2022, the end of the term of the president, to reduce poverty rate from 21.6% of the population to just 14%. That is basically uplifting 6 million Filipinos out of poverty. And the rate and progress we are undergoing seems to say that this is a very possible feat. The poverty line today is 60 pesos per person per day. And we hope to eradicate absolute poverty in 1 generation. That is 23 years from today. And that is in line with the Ambition natin 2040 target. On the economic side, we want this country to graduate from low middle income to upper middle income status by 2022, like China, Indonesia, and Thailand. And once you reach that status, you will see the unleashing of the market potential of this country. And we want, by 2040, 23 years from today, the generation of our children or grandchildren to graduate to high-income country status, where Malaysia and South Korea are today. And this requires a set of fiscal but also economic reforms. By economic reforms, I'm talking about 4 important reforms. The first is securing property rights, so that everyone will have a sense of security, and once you have security over your land or your property, you can begin to invest and create jobs. Well, the reason why agriculture is not doing well is because there is little sense of property rights. That's why farmers do not invest. That's why they remain in short gestating crops rather than the more longer crops that yield higher income. The second is enhancing competition, and we have the Philippine Competition Commission as a start to ensure that market monopolies and uncompetitive practices are addressed so that we have lower prices for better quality of service. The third is reducing the cost of doing business, so that in 3 days, the target is that we can produce licenses, permits, and other government transactions, similar to some cities in Mindanao. And the fourth one is we want to achieve food security, more food at a lower price so that people do not go hungry. And these are reforms that are complementary to the fiscal reforms. In the fiscal reform, there are basically 4 areas. The first, of course, is to improve the capacity of BIR, and the second, BOC, to undertake their respective mandates to collect taxes equitably. And later I will discuss some aspects of this. The third is to ensure that we do not underspend, and that every spending that we do is efficiently done. And this is being reformed through the budget reform bill that is also being heard in Congress. The fourth, which is the key topic for today, is tax policy reform. It doesn't mean that as I explain and dwell on tax policy, that is the only thing we're doing. We are doing a lot more. But for today, I will explain the mandate that I was invited to. We want to do the tax reform so that we can provide sufficient investment in infrastructure, education, and health. If we do not do the tax reform, then the poor will likely remain poor because they have little opportunity to graduate. Our vision is to provide equal opportunities to everyone. And my thinking is really very simple. We want to ensure that mothers are healthy. Currently, 1/3 of mothers are malnourished. And because of that, they give birth to unhealthy children. Once a child is unhealthy, the chances of him or she completing school is also low. That is why they end up in low-paying jobs, below minimum wage. And that perpetuates the cycle of poverty. And does it matter if the person has worked hard or studied hard and have a good job? If he or she spends up to 5 hours a day in traffic, it is hardly any improvement in his productivity. That is why in the tax reform, the money we collect can only be spent in 5 programs. And that is in the proposed bill. Infrastructure, both rural and urban, education, health, housing, and social protection. So let me just briefly discuss each of them. The key to unleashing agriculture productivity lies around 40% around rural infrastructure. And I'm talking about farm-to-market roads and irrigation. These are very, repeated reforms that have not worked in the past. But we have a president from Mindanao who understands the need of rural and lagging areas. That is why there's going to be a big push. Some 15,000 barangays, some 8,000 barangays and 23,000 sitios or sub-barangays today are not connected at all to a national road. Therefore, farmers cannot sell their produce at competitive rates, and services do not reach them, especially during a calamity. And you can imagine the vegetables from Cordillera, half of them spoiled by the time they reach the market. Good thing today, we have NLEX, SETEX, and TPLEX, cutting travel time by more than half. And the tax reform will invest significantly on rural infrastructure. The second is the problem of congestion cannot be resolved by mere alignment of roads or efficiency or enforcement. It really requires brand new roads and mass transport. Many of these will be funded by ODAs, but the government's key contribution is right-of-way, which tend to be a big source of need for infrastructure projects. If we do not address this, then it is like taxing the average Filipino 33%, because everyone on average now spends 4 hours a day on the road. If the productive time is 12 hours a day, then you are basically taxed additional 33%. The time that you could have spent doing something productive and earning is spent on the road. Good thing everyone has a smartphone, so he or she does not go crazy. But you can imagine if no one has a smartphone, then you will go crazy. Now, the next is education. The previous administration, I think, should be congratulated for the K-12 program. Prior to that, only the Philippines, I think, and Myanmar are two countries without a 12-year plus kindergarten education. And every year of education adds 7% to the average income per a World Bank study. And the difference between high school and college is additional 40% in wage or income. That is why a big bulk of the tax reform will fund additional 2 years. So that we can have more classrooms. 100,000 classrooms need to be built. And more teachers, almost 200,000 new teachers need to be hired, so that learning potential can increase. Otherwise, this is a story that we have in the average classroom. Tired teachers, very masungit na guro, and students who are not doing well in school because of the environment. On health, the previous administration must be congratulated for universal health care, meaning every Filipino should get a PhilHealth card, and this is ongoing. The problem is the supply side is not catching up. You go to a hospital, you wait long lines. Some hospitals are not clean enough, therefore you get more sick. That is why the tax reform will fund the supply side. There are 700 hospitals that need to be upgraded, 15,000 barangays with no rural health units, and almost 200,000 health workers still needed to cater to the rural areas. And that is where the tax reform will go. In other words, although the President promised lower taxes, that is the second of the 10-point socioeconomic agenda, the President also promised 9 other items that need to be funded. That is why we have to do the tax reform. Many people say that we do not need the tax reform because, number one, we can collect everything from BIR and BOC by simply addressing smuggling and the spending in DPM and the corruption and tax evasion in the BIR and the BOC. That is very true, and in fact, we are going to do that. And we have done that. We have collected, or soon to collect, 30 billion from a very big smuggler of illicit cigarette. But we have to go back to Congress to change the policy because the bigger problem, I believe, is in the tax code. So we cannot solve the problem of undercollection by whipping BIR and BOC when the real problem is in the tax code. And there are 3 main problems. The first is non-indexation. Many of our taxes do not adjust to inflation, such that after 20 years, they lose value, and therefore we cannot collect. And one of them is fuel excise. Another is property taxes. The second is the hoard of special treatment, exemption, subsidies that we give to almost half of the economy or the population. And although they are very well-meaning, they create an environment very conducive to discretion, therefore leading to negotiation, and therefore corruption and tax evasion. And I'm talking about fiscal incentives, exemptions in the VAT, that create a dual system wherein people transfer their costs and prices to take advantage of the tax code or the inefficiency of the tax system. And the third, like Switzerland and Lebanon, we are 3 countries in the world with absolute bank secrecy. There are only 4 conditions wherein bank accounts can be opened. The first is if you give your consent. The second is if you die, so that the estates can be computed. The third is if you are under an impeachment trial, like the President or the Chief Justice. And the fourth is with a bilateral tax agreement, a foreign country requests the information. Given that, there's really no way for the BIR to audit and catch the real cheats. The confluence of these is a system where we have the highest rates, income tax, both personal and corporate, and the VAT, but we have a very narrow base where half of the economy is accepted. Therefore, we have the inequity, complexity, and inefficiency of the tax system. That's why we have to go back to Congress to address this. That is why it is not enough to simply force the BIR to collect more. In fact, I will bet that if the exemptions are removed, if the tax rates are lowered, then there's no reason to negotiate because there is no one who will fool the taxpayer and no taxpayer who would be fooled. That is why we propose the tax reform for acceleration and inclusion, or the TRAIN. And our objective really is to work towards a simpler, fairer, and more efficient tax system that is characterized by low rates and a broader base, so that it incentivizes investment, job creation, and poverty reduction. And let me go through some of the more important features. The first is we are going to reduce the personal income tax rate so that up to 98% of Filipinos will have tax rates no more than 25%. I will explain the details later. The second is for the small businesses below the VAT threshold, below 3 million gross sales. We are going to give them the option to pay a simple 8% flat tax on gross revenues in lieu of all other taxes. Because currently, the average taxpayer, whether small or large, will have to pay and file income taxes quarterly, percentage taxes quarterly, or the VAT monthly, and have to have most of the requirements certified by the accountant. In the reform, we are going to do with all of these for the small taxpayers so that instead of lining up, falling in line, filling up the forms, they can just avail of the simpler 8%. But this is going to be optional. Then we are going to reduce the donors and estate tax to 6%, align it with capital gains, so that it doesn't matter if the person dies, wants to donate, or simply wants to sell a property. It will all be 6%, similar to many other countries that I know. But if we stop here, then it will be disastrous for the fiscal position because we will be giving away 140 billion when the needs of the country are significant. That is why we have to offset that, and we can do it very equitably by broadening the VAT, increasing the excise on oil, automobile, and introducing a sugar-sweetened beverage tax. Let me explain each of them in a bit of detail. More details, you can ask me questions or visit our website for the 500-page PowerPoint. It is really 500 pages. Okay, currently, the first peso up above the minimum wage is taxable. We are going to simplify that and grant a blanket exemption to the first 250,000 of taxable annual income. That will benefit 83% of taxpayers today. It incorporates already the 50,000 personal exemption and the 25,000 exemption per dependent. And everyone else whose annual taxable income is below 5 million will pay lower taxes. For instance, a school teacher today, an experienced school teacher or health worker or BPO worker with 500,000 annual taxable income has to pay 32% on the margin. Under the tax reform in January 2018, it will fall to 25%, and after 3 more years, it will fall to 20%. And therefore, 99% of Filipinos will see lower income tax. Only 1% whose annual taxable income is above 5 million will pay slightly more at 35%. But that is really what a progressive tax system means. The rich contributes more and the non-rich less. But when you do the math, it also means that you have to be 7 million and above to be worse off in the first year of implementation, and 13 million and above in the second year of implementation. And the 35% is the tax rate on any amount above 5 million. It's not the whole amount. So there's a need to understand that. Currently, the 32% is levied on anything above 500,000. So once people do the math properly, it's not as bad. Next, I would like to talk about the VAT. The VAT is, as you know, a tax on goods and service, which we pay whenever we buy in the groceries, go on travel, watch a movie. We have a very high VAT rate of 12% in the region. Most countries have 10 and as low as 6. The very, very bad or big problem in our VAT system is that we have in the tax code 59 lines of exemptions. And outside the tax code, 84 special laws granting various exemptions for a total of 143. And this is exactly what happens when you have a very complicated tax system. The BIR spends almost every time looking at your deductions. Many corporations have 3 regimes: zero-rated, exempt, and vatable. So if I were a wise and non-compliant businessman, I would transfer my price and cost in such a way that I benefit from these exemptions and zero rating. Unfortunately, many taxpayers are very good and compliant, but there are really some who take advantage. That is why we only collect 1/3 of what we could have collected from the VAT. And all of these countries collect far more in VAT than we do because they have a lower rate but a broader base. And so our reform is to get rid of all exemptions except raw food, agriculture, education, health, and international agreements. And if we do it right, we are open to reducing the VAT rate to level the playing field so that it's not half of the economy paying 12% and the other half exempted. And for exporters, we will do the VAT once and for all properly. We will request you to pay the VAT on your inputs, but we will promptly give you a refund in cash within 90 days. And the law is proposed and stated in a conditional term. We will not remove or change the regime unless we have a working VAT refund system that pays in cash in 90 days. So that is the agreement that we have had with Congress and the exporters. Our vision is when you leave the country, you should be able to get a refund on your purchases like Singapore, like Indonesia, like Thailand does. Not keeping the money that is rightfully the exporter's money or the tourist's money. Then the next important reform is the fuel excise. We have not adjusted for 20 years. When I started driving in 1997, I paid 10 peso per liter for gasoline, of which 4 peso and 35 cents was the excise tax on gasoline. Today, I have a job, I have savings, I'm much richer, but prior to joining government. But I still pay for my gasoline 4 peso and 35 cents for excise when the price of gasoline is now 44 pesos. And I have savings and I can afford. Every year, we lose 145 billion because we do not adjust for inflation these taxes, while prices and the cost of providing government services have more than grown by 6 times. So we are going to increase the excise tax on all petroleum products by 6 pesos because that's the amount eroded for 20 years. That's only fair to adjust inflation. But we will do that gradually over 3 years. 3 peso in January, then 2 pesos in January 2019, 1 peso, and then we will index inflation. Well, most of the critics say that this is anti-poor, but the reality here is the rich will be the most affected. The Philippine Statistics Authority survey shows that the richest 10% of Filipino families, or the richest 2 million households, already consume 51% of oil products. And the richest 1% already consume 13% of oil products, including transportation costs, the same share as the bottom 50%. Then, therefore, you can imagine who will be hit the most. The simple reason is that these people, including you and me, have cars, and many cars. And you fill a full tank, that's 2,000 easily. And 1 or 2 people ride a car. Everyone else take the public transport, share the jeep with 20 other people, and pay on average less than 200 per week. That is 10 times less than the typical person has a car. Therefore, by keeping excise on gasoline and diesel exempted, this is really obviously a subsidy to the rich. Even if we try to say it's pro-poor, it is 10 times more pro-rich than pro-poor. That is why we are going to reform, and the money we collect from the rich, we give that back to the poor in the form of targeted cash transfer and social services. And mind you, it's not true that prices will increase. And all businessmen know that there are many reasons why price will increase. One is the weather, one is the buffer stocking, the importation, the income, the even profiteering, and basic supply and demand. So the tax should not be blamed on the increase. And I show you a very a disputable example. In January 2016, the price of diesel was 18 pesos per liter. In January 2017, it became 32 pesos per liter. I don't know if you noticed. Probably now you realize, because every month the price increased by 1 peso. So it doesn't really hurt. That is a 14 peso increase or a 76% increase in the price of diesel. However, all measures of inflation is low, suggesting that this very big increase in the price of diesel or oil products hardly affected the economy. And I looked at all major commodities purchased by typical households, from laundry bars to noodles and rice, and I do not see any significant increase. Next slide. Therefore, I do not understand how a 3 peso increase in excise will lead to a fantastic increase in inflation, as many people in the street and in Congress and even the shipping, trucking, and logistics sector and the farmers claim, when the 14 peso hardly increase the general price. I do not dispute that some areas will increase, but I cannot account for 42,000 barangays. But I look at the average, and I do not see any rally, dispute, hunger, or strike because of the increase in diesel. So that is why we think this is a very reasonable tax. And if people are reasonable, they will understand. This is also pro-environment and pro-health. There's no way for renewable energy to prosper if we exempt the dirtier fuel from excise tax. And then finally, 80% of the people love me for this, 20% hate me, automobile excise. But we will do this very progressively. The cheaper cars, lower increase. The more expensive cars, bigger. So the Toyota Vios and Mirage hardly will increase 10 to 13,000. Those advertisement or in the media or social media that claim that they will double are purely wrong. Either the source is incompetent or deceiving you. Of course, if you buy a Land Cruiser, it will be more expensive. It is graduated. And the call center agent can easily afford a Vios because his take home is 21,000. And if he pays it in cash, then he's quite rich. Most people will pay in installment. That's around 1,000 to 2,000 per month. We have to do this also because our measure of development is not that the poor will have cars, but that the rich will take public transport. And it's not true that we are not improving public transport. It just takes time. LRT 1 is being expanded. MRT 7 is groundbreaking. LRT 2 has been built for 12 years and is being expanded. BRT in Cebu is starting. And all the expressways, NAIA, TPDEX, C5 widening, Commonwealth widening, all have happened. So, but we cannot cope because the economy is growing very fast. Then finally, it's not in the slide, it's the sugar sweetened beverage tax. Okay, the farmers will be affected, the industry will be affected, but let me give the other picture. Today, 1 million dialysis patients have to shell out 32 billion a year for dialysis treatment. The PhilHealth can only pay around, they shell out around 24 billion, and PhilHealth pays additional 8 billion. This is a big loss of productivity because every dialysis patient has to be accompanied by another family member, and that's a loss of productivity. Today, 3 to 5 million Filipinos have diabetes. I don't know how many of you have diabetes and taking maintenance. I interviewed many people, and the average cost of maintenance is 5,000 per month or 60,000 per year. That's 60,000 times 3 million, easily 180 billion spent on a non-communicable disease that could have been prevented. So, since none of us will tell our children that sugar-sweetened beverage are healthy and that you should drink it every day, I think it's only fair that we, as a public policy, tax these to discourage consumption so that there will be more disposable income for healthier food. But of course, the rate we can discuss. I think 10 peso might be a bit too high for some goods, so we are open to discussing. But the key here is to remember that this is a health measure. It's not true that on the one hand I am giving tax breaks, on the other hand I am taking all of them back. The reality here is what I give to the average Filipino is far more than what they have to pay in combined income, VAT, oil, automobile, and the slight increase in inflation. The more important question is what do we do with the poor, the minimum wage and below, who are not going to benefit from the income tax reduction? That is around 50% of the Filipino people. Well, the first is we are going to increase the VAT threshold from 1.9 to 3 million so that these small stores need not charge VAT. The sari-sari store in the Carinderia. And that is where most of the poor buy anyway. For those who will be affected because of the oil, we have the targeted cash transfer program where we will give money to the poorest 10 million households so that their consumption can be smoothened. The overall story here is that we will return what we get from the rich and redistribute that to the poor in the form of better social protection and services. To summarize, there are three things that I want you to memorize. Tell your wife or husband, your children, your friends, and family members are the following. The first is, let's look at this tax reform as a package because that is where 99% of Filipinos will benefit. There are so many supporters of the tax reform, but they tell me, please remove the provision that will hurt their industry or sector, and we will support everything. Unfortunately, if I listen to everyone, the whole reform falls apart. I have no more package to present. I'm talking about the cooperative sector, the BPO sector, the ROHQ sector, and the export sector, and the transport sector, and the lefties, and so on. But if we look at it as a package where we can balance the trade-offs, then that will be far easier. The second is, let's judge the tax reform, not from the reform itself, but how we return the money to the people in the form of better infrastructure and social services. All 1.2 trillion that we expect to collect from package 1 the next 5 years will only be used for 5 main spending programs: infrastructure, education, health, housing, and social protection. Nothing else. Then the third is, let's look at this tax reform as an investment in our future. There's no investment such as working hard or studying hard that is easy. All of us become prosperous and successful because we work hard. It's not because we benefited from exemptions, incentives, subsidies, and freebies. If that's the measure of how we should expect the poor to be prosperous, I think that's totally wrong. What the poor needs to be prosperous is that they should be healthy, educated, and they have roads so that they can go to school, to work, and go home. It's very easy for a rich person, like a rich student, to graduate and get a good job. Chances are, without being lazy, he will land in a good and high-paying job. Why? Because he has aircon, he has a driver, he has cold water, hot water, a study room to study. But for the poor student who live in the slum or rural areas, have to commute and walk 2 hours, noisy, drug-infested, violence-infested community, I don't know how he will prosper if he, even with the right mind, and finish college. And so the tax reform is really about bridging the future, paving the way to provide equal opportunities to all Filipinos. I will share my family. This is me and my 3-month baby at some time ago. Notice the big fat cheek. When he was 1 year old, he was hospitalized for diarrhea and pneumonia. And that's him slightly thinner with the mother in the hospital, drinking medicine. Every year, 13 out of 1,000 babies die before 1 year old from the same diseases, diarrhea and pneumonia. Luckily, I have money and savings to bring my baby to a hospital. And if you have a first child and you really collapse and exhibited high degree of dehydration, then you will extremely worry. And that's what I felt. And every year, 30 out of 1,000 Filipino children do not reach 5 years old. So that's around 26,000 infants dying before 1 year old and 60,000 Filipino children dying before 5 years old from the very same diseases, diarrhea and pneumonia. So that is why we are going to invest a lot of this money from the tax reform in the health of our children. And 6 years later, when he is in school, I will ask my baby what he wants to be. He probably will tell me he wants to be a doctor, a teacher, or a pilot, or an astronomer. But he'll most likely achieve that. But not true for Ethan, who is the 6-year-old son of the Ashby's Yaya. Ashby is the second name, Kate is the first name of my son. Because he is unlikely to finish school and therefore unlikely to achieve his dream of becoming a seaman, a doctor, or a teacher. Finally, when I was in World Bank, I met a janitor who has been a friend for 12 years. Bong commutes 7 hours a day to get from Montalban, in Rizal, to the World Bank office in Bonifacio, Global City. That is like a 70% tax on his productive time per day of 12 hours. Because he cannot afford being a minimum wage worker, he sent his family back to Ormoc, Leyton. And it's an experience, I think, of many Filipinos. That's why we are going to invest significantly in infra. I know many of you have mistrust. Same with me before I joined government. But now I'm here, I commit to trying to work hard. And I realize it's not easy. That's why more than the revenue that I'm going to collect from your hard-earned money, more than the debates in Congress and the debates with interest groups, is the belief that if we do this tax reform, together with other complementary reforms that I mentioned earlier, together with all the anti-corruption effort that the President wants to do, I think we can make a lasting difference in each Filipino's life. For me, that is the real story of the tax reform. Far different from what you hear probably in the media, that this is anti-poor, that this is going to hurt and create a lot of job losses. For me, this is our investment in the future, and this needs to be supported, and and the business sector has to contribute. And I hope this somehow alleviates many of your concern about the tax reform. So I will end here. I most welcome your questions. Thank you very much.